Now then, the first thing I want to say is that the title of this video is not clickbait. This is the Alfa Giulia Veloce, and it is a gorgeous thing to drive and to look at. It's got 280 horsepower and 400 newton meters of torque from a turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine, and that power goes to the rear wheels via a limited slip differential and a ZF8-speed gearbox. Italian flair, power, rear-wheel drive, and some good mechanicals. Sounds like a recipe for some fun. But, will it be though? Well, today we are going to find out. But not only that, we are going to do a 0 to 60, a 30 to 70, see what this thing is like on the motorway, will it do its claimed MPG figures, see how loud it is with a proper decibel reader, and of course, see how fun this thing is to drive. My name is Tom, and you are watching Paragon Cars. Let's get into it. First things first, let's see how this Alfa Giulia Veloce performs. Does it really have all 280 horsepower, or is it 280 Italian horsepower? Well, let's find out and do the 30 to 70 sprint. Well, as it turns out, those Italian horses are actually much more like German horses in the Alfa Giulia Veloce, because we did a time of just 4.79 seconds, which is exactly the same as a very fast VW Golf GTI DSG Auto. That is pretty impressive, especially when you consider the fact, although the GTI has slightly less power, it is also lighter, so their power to weight is pretty much the same. That is pretty cool. Interior up next then, and this is where Alfa Romeo actually really surprised me. So not only are the materials really nice, so like the leathers themselves feel like a nice high grain, there's a lot of soft touch materials everywhere, all the touch points are nice and soft, there are a couple of bits of scratchy plastic but it's not too bad. Then shifter paddles feel nice and clicky, all the buttons themselves feel nice and clicky, the cup holders are nice, the sound of the door sounds pretty solid to me, and there's loads of rear legroom, plenty of headroom for someone that's 5'11" and the hair, and an armrest with some cup holders which also have grippy bits. The only downside in this car is the boot really, because we don't really have anything to talk about. We don't have shopping hooks, we don't really have, well, yeah, we don't have any underfloor storage. We've just got a tyre repair kit and your towing eye, typical Italian, and we do have levers for folding the seats down, but you have to go all the way through the back of the car to actually push them down, which is just a bit of a pain in the backside. Ugh. Once folded down though, you do have quite a large opening and a lovely flat load floor. So if you can live with the fact that there's not a lot going on in the boot in terms of shopping hooks and 12-volt sockets, it's a pretty good load bed. But I'm sure you guys are wondering now, what is this car's fatal flaw? Well, I think we should get on a B road first, so I can explain what it is. Now, we're going to start on a smaller B road because this is where the Alfa Romeo Giulia Veloce really shines, or just any Giulia, to be fair, because it's got that Italian DNA right down there. Let's go for a manual gearbox as well. ZF8 speed in this thing. And the first thing you notice is that this has some proper get up and go. Definitely feels more than 280 horsepower. And then the next thing you notice is that the damping is gorgeous in this thing. And that is because Italian roads, well, a lot of them are kind of similar to this. They're bumpy, they're lumpy, so they require slightly softer damping. And to be honest, it really works down roads like this, and it works down pretty much all UKB roads in a way that's actually much more pleasant than a BMW 3 Series. Oh. Then we get to the steering, but before that, will this thing hit 60 before the corner? Let's find out. Easily, yes. It's got plenty of poke. And although these are column mounted shifters, I actually quite like them. They have a lovely feel to them. But yeah, the steering, it's just sharp, it's dialed in, and it feels absolutely gorgeous. It's so fast, but it's light, and the wheel itself is nice and thin, and I can feel the texture of the road. It's not a huge amount of texture, not like a hydraulic rack, but what you can feel is lovely. What is there is gorgeous. And the engine itself is really peppy. It's not an engine that really loves to rev out, but it is one that has a lot of punch. So it does feel nice to get to about 5,500 revs. So far we have nicer damping than a 3 Series, better steering than a 3 Series. But what's this car's fatal flaw? Well, let's get to the roundabout up here, and I can show you what it is. Right, so still in the sportier setting. Let's see if we can get this thing a little bit sideways then, shall we? Or just explore the limits of grip. So, foot down. Oh, well, nothing's really happening. I wonder why that is. Yeah. Have you guessed it yet? There is no way to turn off the traction control in this car. And this is a performance pack equipped Giulia Veloce, which means we have adaptive dampers and a limited slip differential. I am in a near 300 horsepower rear-wheel drive Alfa Romeo with a limited slip diff, and there is no button or no way in the infotainment system to turn off the traction control. I mean, whoever decided that is a complete and utter moron. Like, what were you thinking, Alfa Romeo? I can get right to the car's limit and then it pulls me back. I can't explore the actual limits of grip of this car. So, yeah, that's its fatal flaw. But how does it sound through a tunnel? Let's find out. It sounds quite raw for a 2-litre engine. It's quite nice, actually. And you get nice gear change sounds from this ZF 8-speed gearbox. You get a kind of rasp. It's not loud, but it is there. And the gear changes themselves are lovely and smooth. You can't go wrong with this box. And I do love these analog dials as well. They do have a lovely look to them. And then the brakes are fantastic. Really, really nice. And in typical Alfa fashion, it flashes the hazards because it knows the person behind you probably isn't paying any attention. But yeah, you put your foot down and it kind of just goes around the corner. And that is about it, really. You see the traction control light flashing, and yeah, you just get completely hampered by the car's computers and assist systems. So a potentially fantastic handling car, completely ruined by the fact you can't turn any of the assist systems off. Now, one thing I will say is that you can still enjoy the actual feel of all the controls of the car. So the steering, as I said, much better than a 3 Series actually. It's just as fast as in the rack itself, but you can feel a lot more of what's going on, and the shape of the wheel is much nicer also. And the damping, oh Lord, honestly, if you're thinking about getting a saloon car in the UK and you want to do some fast B-road driving, get this. The damping is much better in this. It's much more suited to UK roads. It feels like aftermarket suspension, to be honest. And whilst not being able to turn the traction control off is a huge bummer, there are some ways around that, namely with plug-in OBD devices or doing some funky things with the battery. Not that I recommend doing any of those things, but yeah, it would certainly make this car a lot more fun to drive. The potential is there. It's just, I can't have access to it. It's so frustrating. Anyway, enough ranting about why I can't drift this thing. Let's see what it can do on the 0 to 60 sprint. It's claimed to do it in 5.7 seconds. But are Alfa Romeo lying? And more importantly, does this 6-year-old car still have all those ponies under the bonnet? Let's find out. 0 to 60, we absolutely smashed the claim time by 0.3 of a second and did 5.39 seconds, which, in all honesty, is as fast as you ever need a car to be. A Porsche 911 from 2004 was around 5.4 seconds, and that was considered extremely fast back in the day. So, this car doing 5.4 seconds is more than enough for daily driving, and actually quicker than a BMW 840i Grand Coupe. Not bad. Right, so obviously it handles like an Alfa, which is a lovely thing indeed, but what's it like doing the boring stuff? Because that is what you're going to be doing in this thing 99% of the time, unfortunately. Well, getting onto the motorway, we are just in N mode, or normal mode. Let's just put our foot down and see how this engine and gearbox respond from 40 miles an hour. Fairly quickish downshift, and we're straight up to 70 very easily. Yeah, it is a quick car. And then once you are on the motorway, we do have things like lane assist and cruise control, which is very nice. And it's a good system actually. It's cruise control with brake assist, so it'll actually slow you down with the rear brakes rather than just kind of letting you coast to a slower speed, which means if you are on the M25 and you kind of need to slow down quite quickly for a speed camera, you don't have to actually use the brake, you can just use the controller on the steering wheel. But yeah, once you are on the motorway, quite a few journalists complained about wind noise. Now then, whilst I don't want to discredit any journalists, I want to get some real results with a proper decibel reader. So what is this car gonna do? Let's find out. So as it turns out, I think a lot of journalists have just been driving some nicer cars, because this did 71.6 decibels, which is basically the same as an Audi A3. Now, if you don't know, the Audi A3 and the 8V version of the Audi A3, the previous generation, was really nice and quiet inside. So this is actually a very quiet car. But yeah, visibility is fantastic on the motorway. Response is also very nice, just at half throttle. That's one thing this engine is really good at, is just changing down 2 gears and then giving you loads of torque, which is exactly what you want when you are on the motorway. But what about the economy? Well, this is kind of where the Alfa Giulia falls apart slightly, because something like a BMW 330i or M340i with a big inline 6-cylinder turbocharged engine, they will easily do over 40 miles per gallon. And now this car will do over 40 mpg, which hopefully we can demonstrate today. We'll look at the results at the end of this motorway run and a little bit of driving through town. But yeah, the combined figure is only 37 mpg, and from owners' reports, I think that's a bit of an over-exaggeration still. But anyway, as I said, we'll find out the result of that test once we finish this motorway journey and a little drive round town. We're doing basically the same test we always do, but in reverse. But scores on the door so far then: it has nicer steering than a BMW 3 Series, it has nicer suspension than a BMW 3 Series, it's just as quiet as a Mercedes C-Class, and a little bit quieter than a 3 Series, mainly because we're riding on slightly smaller wheels. I think that's definitely helping. And gearbox is lovely, interior quality is lovely. There is very little to complain about so far. But one thing I think I should mention is reliability. Now, it's interesting this. Alfa Romeo used to have some pretty quirky things going on in their cars which made them seem unreliable. And a couple of things, you know, would make them actually unreliable. But in recent years, and to be honest, for the past 15, 20 years, they have been some pretty fantastic cars in terms of reliability. And the Alfa Giulia Veloce is no exception. Owners report that these cars have been literally faultless for them. There has been nothing going wrong mechanically. Now, of course, it still has a couple of quirks with the infotainment, as any car does. You know, sometimes things will disconnect, like your Apple CarPlay, and then it'll reconnect itself a couple of minutes later. But that's fairly normal, and to be honest, I could easily live with that. So if you're looking at an Alfa Romeo or a BMW, don't fret. You're actually kind of in the same ballpark in terms of reliability and safety. But anyway, let's finish up round town and then see what our final MPG figure is. Now then, over speed bumps, this is also where the Alfa Giulia is absolutely lovely. You've got very soft damping, as you do on B roads, so there is very little to complain about around town. And even though this car is quite low down, or it certainly looks it, you can kind of go over the like singular speed bumps, you know, the ones where you kind of go straight over them quite easily without bottoming out. It means a commute to work isn't ruined by speed bumps like this, and these are really aggressive ones. It's just a bit softer than a BMW 3 Series, but it still seems to have the same level of body control, which is quite interesting. To be honest, I can't knock it. It's a very pleasant car to just pootle around in, because all the control weights, as I said earlier, are very nice. Steering's just light, throttle pedal very intuitive, brake pedal really nice and sharp. And all those things kind of combine into just a really pleasant driving experience, even when you're going slowly. And I think that's the sign of a very good car. If you can drive it slow in traffic and still enjoy driving it, then that is the sign of a fantastic car. Now, in terms of parking, yes, this is an easy car to park, but there is one thing that is a little bit of a joke, to be honest, and that is the reverse camera. So if I pull to a stop here, go into reverse, yeah, this is kind of like early 2000s in terms of quality. It is pretty atrocious how bad it is. And it does have lines which supposedly tell you where you're going, but actually don't really. They're not super accurate. Now, steering rack is fast and lock to lock is quick as well. And you've got quite a lot of angle, to be fair. But actually getting it in the bay in one go, if you were to just look at the reverse camera, is surprisingly difficult, because the lines don't seem to actually correlate to your input. It's really odd. But thankfully parking sensors are nice and accurate, and the graphic is quite nice as well. Then once you're in park, getting to the first notch on the door is a very easy feat indeed. And that reminds me, one thing I forgot to talk about was the Harman Kardon sound system. Now, it is actually good. It's a fairly decent system in this thing, and you don't really get any rattles when you turn the system up either. I would say it's actually pretty much comparable to the 3 Series' Harman Kardon sound system, which, you know, I would not have thought it would do. Then coming out of junctions, even though you can't turn the traction control off, with the limited slip diff, you do have a little bit more grip, so you just plant your foot and off you go. A little bit of tyre squeal, but you still get up to 30 absolutely fast enough. You're never going to miss a gap in traffic in this thing. And there's plenty of torque low down as well, so it just makes it a very responsive car when you're trying to get into a gap in traffic. Anyway, how did we do in terms of MPG? Let's have a look. Well, not too bad. Now remember, that includes, so we do driving on the motorway and driving around town and a little bit of sporty driving, which I did just off camera. So we did 30 miles per gallon in total, which I think is not terrible. It's just not quite as good as what a BMW 330i would do. But you know what? I think I can live with that. And if you're driving slowly, you can still easily get about 45 miles per gallon out of this thing. But then, unfortunately, I just come back to that one fatal flaw. Even though this is a 5-star car, Alfa Romeo, you've built an amazing car for drivers that now many drivers, including me, just won't buy purely because of this one thing. It's like, do you remember Grand Theft Auto 4 or previous Grand Theft Autos? You couldn't cross the bridge into the next part of the map until you'd done certain missions. This Alfa is exactly like that, except I've done all the missions. I know what I'm doing, and I just want to progress to the rest of the map. But all I'm actually doing is staring at that other part of the map that I can never go to unless I use hacks. Crazy decision, Alfa. Crazy. But anyway, as always, I hope you enjoyed content like this. If you did, give us a like, and why not subscribe, as not only can you see more content like this, you can of course see everything we have for sale, which at this moment includes this very nice Alfa Romeo Giulia Veloce. Surprisingly good, this car. It's just, you know, that one thing that holds it back. But if you're not bothered about turning the traction control off, personally, I would buy this over a BMW 3 Series. Now, if you want to go and see some other content we've done or subscribe to the channel, I'll put some links up here in the video for you. But if not, I guess I might see you next time. Or I will see you next time. I'll be an optimist. My name has been Tom, and you have been watching Paragon Cars. I'll see you guys on the next one. Cheers.